Architecture school makes you do some weird things. Let's talk about it. I've got a great list of some really weird stuff that I've compiled from some friends throughout the industry. I'm just going to read through the list and I'll throw up wherever each one is from on the screen for you. So the first up are program-specific things. During my first semester of college back in 2009, we ordered some sock and boppers. Now for those of you that don't remember what those are, they're basically like giant inflatable boxing gloves for kids to hit each other with. We took them out on the lawn outside a studio and had a fight night. I landed one punch on one of my friends and the glove popped. Also during my first year, we got a lot of snow and there were a bunch of people that spent a couple days outside building a full-on igloo. It had some ice couches and everything. Late at night in studio, we would go down to the mezzanine between the two studio levels and we would just set up a net using the big pinup boards that are on wheels, and we would play blind volleyball over it when we got really bored. I taped out a 4-square court in studio to play when we were there late. It seems like that's a pretty common theme. Ugh. Every year we had a parade where the first years had to dress up like famous buildings. It's inspired by the 1931 Beaux-Arts Ball, where a bunch of famous architects dressed up like their most famous buildings. But our version felt a lot more like hazing than it did a nod to a Beaux-Arts Society ball. For a while we only had 2 laser cutters in the studio, and you could only sign up for 1-hour slots at a time. You couldn't sign up for another slot until you used that slot. All the signups were on paper, and we knew when those papers were gonna get posted, so we would all camp out for hours ahead of time, trying to be first in line to get the best spot. We had to camp out for laser cutters too, but it was lottery drawings for signups. I think we just need more laser cutters. Our next category is sleep, a big one in architecture school. I was such a heavy sleeper in school that during my second year, I completely slept through a fire alarm. My roommate tried to wake me up, but I was so delirious that I thought it was my alarm clock and I wouldn't get out of bed. Eventually, I got up and tried to get in the shower to avoid the sound, but obviously the sound was still going in there. It wasn't until my roommates all came back in and the fire alarm was over that I figured out exactly what it was. And another person, I think I slept through a fire alarm too. I would go for 30 to 45 minute walks in below freezing temperature at 3 a.m. in the morning to stay awake for an upcoming deadline. And keep in mind, this person went to school with me at Penn State, so those below freezing temperatures could have been 0 or negative temperatures. I poured a bucket of water on my bed so I wouldn't sleep on it that night. Why would you pour a bucket of water? Just don't get in the bed. What? I would sleep under my desk before pinups because one time I slept in and almost missed my presentation. No, I feel that too. The same thing happened to me. I almost missed a presentation and someone had to call me like 10 times, didn't go through, and eventually they had to break in and like rip me out of my bed. I've slept on a pile of chipboard in the studio for a quick power nap or on the hardwood flooring. Is people really like the convenience of sleeping on the floor, I guess? I was sucked into the groupthink that staying up and pulling all-nighters was a badge of honor. We later realized that that is just not true at all. You didn't need to do all-nighters. Let's talk about workflows. I spent so much time in the studio that it was easier to go buy new underwear than it was to do laundry. During a final deadline, I would pick a new album and listen to it on repeat for 2 weeks straight, working on the project, walking to classes, before the jury review, and for the next week if the review went well. I would listen to the same song on repeat as sort of a white noise to keep creative thinking going. That feels a little superstitious. Just sat and thought. Maybe about dropping? I had a desk light and would turn it on every day as if it gave me energy. These are good. My habits before getting a studio night going involved running to the local convenience store and grabbing snacks and energy drinks. The night felt off if you didn't have reinforcements. And of course, we have to talk about actual projects. During my 4th year, one of our professors made us build scale models, but the scale was massive. The thing ended up being like 6 feet tall, and I was using actual 2x4s to build the model. I'm pretty sure it was the same professor that in my 2nd year forced us to hand draft wall sections that were 8 feet long, all on the same continuous piece of paper. Logistically, this was so annoying. I drove 2 hours round trip to buy 2 sheets of African Padap for a scale model of a boathouse. We've all been there. There was this guy named Cletus that has a farm a few miles from campus, and I had met him before. I bought some wood from him out of his barn. That's why I needed some wood for another project, so I drove out there to his farm. Cletus wasn't there, but his shop was open, so I went inside, cut the wood that I needed and took it, and left some cash on the desk. Never saw Cletus again. I would go dumpster diving with my classmates to find any used cardboard to make quick concept models. I think we've all been there. I designed a birdhouse for a specific bird we were assigned. That is just too classic for an architecture project prompt. Do something stupid for something that's unrealistic. And then at the end of the project, we were told that the best house for the birds were the ones they create themselves naturally. Perfect. I went to an outdoor stadium fundraiser sleepover meant to raise awareness and funds for the homeless community. The task was to build a shelter out of cardboard, so we designed a cool collapsible cardboard tent. We thought we were really cool architecture students. We got there and quickly realized it was mostly middle and high schoolers and their parents with pretty basic cardboard box homes. I blended old shoes in a residential blender to create a new type of recycled insulation for a materials class. It worked surprisingly well. Okay, so we had this materials project in my second year where you had to make 3 rectangular blocks out of non-building materials. Those blocks had to connect together and then span across a gap. People were making some really weird blocks. One person made a block out of bread. One person made a block out of human hair. So my brilliant idea was that it was October near Halloween, so I went out to the pumpkin patch and got a couple big pumpkins. I cut down the sides and then I box jointed the corners of the pumpkins together. Then I found out that the deadline was moving the week and my pumpkins were gonna rot. So I read that you could keep pumpkins fresh in bleach. So I ended up with a trash can full of bleach and pumpkins next to my desk in studio for like a week. Eventually you get to the point where you've done so many weird things in architecture school that it just starts to feel normal. Now if you've had a much more typical college experience than me, you probably think I'm crazy. But I would love to hear all the weird things that you've done in architecture school, so let me know in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.